Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got the on-track series for the French Tier 10 Tech Tree Tank Destroyer, the Foch 155. Now if you do like the video, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe down below, as it really does help out the channel. And yes, the on-track series, it's where we play from Tier 5 through to Tier 10, so you see the whole line from Tier 5 up, get to grips with how the line's going to go for your mainstay grind, and just see what the Tier 10 is like when you get to the end of it. So we're starting here at Tier 5, the S35 CA, which is the Bathtub. Now it's because it, naturally, look at it, it looks like a bathtub. And it's a very, very good tank destroyer. Now, it has a choice of two guns, which is the 90mm AC Cannon DCA 30, or the 105mm AC MLE 1930S. I run the 105mm gun because it is an archaic gun, and that is because its premium round on its APCR has 330 alpha as opposed to its standard 300 alpha. And with the better shell velocity, penetration, etc., it's just a gun that I much prefer on this vehicle. Now, it does mean that you have to spam premium, so if you don't want to spam premium, fire the 90mm gun instead. But I prefer this gun because of the fact that it's got that higher alpha at 330, it has the better shell velocity, etc. And it generally just feels like it packs a punch like a tank destroyer should do, or like I feel like I want out of a tank destroyer, not that lower alpha, right? So we run the 105, that's what I'm going to show in this game, because I feel like that is probably actually the best way to run the tanks full prem on that APCR shell for this 105mm gun. So the S35 CA, the Bathtub, it's got a 37km/h top speed with a 12km/h reverse speed, a 260 horsepower engine, which is 12.73 horsepower per ton ratio, which means it is pretty sluggish. It's pretty sluggish getting up to that 37km/h top speed, and it is just that little bit slow feeling in terms of its mobility on this tank. And a lot of that is down to the fact that it's got 2.49 on its soft terrain resistance, 1.47 on medium, and 1.29 on firm. The terrain resistances are really not great on this vehicle, and they hold it back a lot, especially with having the slightly slower power to weight ratio as well. 20% internal fire chance as well is on the high end of fire chances, and generally if you get shot through the front and you get your engine damaged, it's likely to set you on fire, so be careful of that. 206 meters of still concealment is incredible. Incredible. 228 meters of on-the-move concealment as well with the build that I run is, again, absolutely fantastic. The camo is just absolute filth. It's a strength that you really want to use on this vehicle, because as you can see through firing through concealment here, it's quite easy to stay unspotted, and especially at Tier 5 and 6, where the view range in general on a lot of vehicles is a lot lower, that sort of camo is massively impactful and is absolutely amazing for the Bathtub. You've got 396 meters of view range though, which is pretty poor, but it's pretty standard for a Tier 5 tank destroyer, and because you've got such good camo, you still will outspot people quite easily in this vehicle. That 30.52 degrees a second on the hull traverse, which means that your tracks turn left and right at 30.52 degrees a second, means it does turn fairly quickly on its tracks for a tank destroyer like this, but again, the ground resistances making your tank feel that little bit sluggish can occasionally make you feel like you do turn very, very slowly. 1.96 accuracy during rotation with a 3.17 accuracy during movement is absolutely awful, and again it means that that aim circle, as you can see here, blooms out a great deal. And you've got a 2.3 second aim time, which means it takes a wee bit to get that gun aimed in when you are fully bloomed out, which it will do a lot because, like I say, as soon as you move the tank, as soon as you turn the tank, it just blooms out massively, as you can see right there, and it means that your reticle is absolutely huge. It's really poor, but that's very tank destroyer-esque. 9 degrees of gun depression is very flexible for this tank on a ridgeline though, and that is very, very nice for the Bathtub, meaning that you don't feel like you're struggling for gun depression when you are on ridgelines. 0.36 accuracy with this 105mm gun is a bit derpy, and it does occasionally like to derp shots, so you do have to be careful of that. A 9.12 second reload is 1900 DPM, nearly 2k DPM, which is pretty decent for a Tier 5 tank destroyer, and especially with having that Pack-a-Punch 330 alpha for a Tier 5, that is nice indeed. 165 penetration on the standard AP is okay, but it's all about the 223 penetration premium APCR rounds on this vehicle with that higher 330 alpha, because the standard round has a 300 alpha. So yeah, it's an archaic gun in that sense, in the fact that it has higher alpha on its premium than its standard, and it's just never been changed. And it's one of the reasons why this gun just generally feels that little bit nicer when you are firing the premium, just for having that higher alpha damage in general. 1,063 meters a second shell velocity on this premium APCR round is pretty nice for the Bathtub. It's not incredible, but it is slightly above average, and it will feel slightly nicer using that APCR than the AP, which has 850 meters a second shell velocity. So what do I run in terms of accrue and equipment on the old Bathtub to get those sorts of stats? Well, I run Born Leader, Rapid Reload, Sixth Sense, Situational Awareness, Steady Aim, Camouflage Expertise, Muffled Shot, Silent Driving, and Clutch Braking. Clutch Braking to get the track traverse as good as humanly possible, with the Camouflage Net in conjunction with the Camouflage Expertise, the Muffled Shot, and the Silent Driving to get that absolute filth camo that we get on this vehicle. The Advanced Load to get the best out of the DPM, and Optics so that I can try and spot for myself if I can. Steady Aim to get 10% better accuracy, because it's always nicer to have the best accuracy you can get on a tank destroyer, so it's something that you really want to be able to help out on this vehicle. And Clutch Braking, like I say, to get the track traverse faster so you can try and get this gun on target. And I generally run that crew on the whole line as you go all the way up these French tank destroyers, but the equipment changes from tank to tank. It's the same equipment setup that I run on the ARL V39 and the AMX AC46 though. And we finished that first game with the 3 kills, the 4.1k damage, 1180 assistance, the ace tanker, the high caliber, the Confederate medal, with 2.5k base XP. An absolutely amazing game there for the Bathtub, but I think it just about showed off what the Bathtub's all about, which is, if you're in those bushes and you're able to keep that bit of distance, you can just keep sniping with that gun, keep damage flowing, and it really does hit hard, and it is very, very nice for that 105mm gun to have that. And speaking of that 105mm gun, we are now onto the ARL V39. Now again, the ARL V39 has the choice. You have this 105mm gun ACMLE 1930S, which is the same gun that you just see me use on the Bathtub. And you have the 90mm AC DCA 45, which is still a pretty damn good gun. But, once again, it doesn't hit that hard. The 105mm gun really does feel so much more satisfying on this ARL, and it makes it feel that little bit nicer to use in terms of hitting people harder and using it in that tank destroyer capacity. As 240 alpha on the 90mm, it's just a little bit low, and it just feels that bit of meh, realistically. So once again, you're going to have to fire the full premium to be able to get the most out of this 105mm gun to get that high penetration, but also that 330 alpha instead of the 300 alpha, and you will have a pretty decent time. In terms of the DPM, it's very, very similar between the two guns. I do have a video on the ARL V39 from a wee while ago that went over the choices you could have for this vehicle. But yeah, for me personally, I prefer this 105mm gun because it is a very, very nice gun. So the ARL V39, it's a tank destroyer that I actually don't mind. I actually found this tank to be pretty decent. It's not the fastest in the universe, but it's not the slowest. Its camo's pretty good. That gun, like I say, in terms of the 105mm gun, slaps pretty hard. It's fairly consistent. It lacks gun depression, which is a bit of a pain. And the yaw limit on the gun, compared to the Bathtub, sucks. So looking left to the right, on the ARL V39, it only traverses to the left and right 7 degrees, which is really not very nice. But it is indicative of the rest of the line, because the whole line's like that, where the yaw limit is just a bit poo. So, the ARL V39 has a 42 km/h top speed with a 12 km/h reverse speed, 450 horsepower engine, which is 17 horsepower per ton ratio, which means you do get up to that 42 km/h top speed, but once again, the terrain resistances on this vehicle are a little bit lacking, and they have a 2.3 on soft, a 1.38 on medium, and a 1.29 on firm, which means that, yeah, it can be sluggish in terms of getting up to that top speed occasionally, depending on what terrain you're on, but generally will get up to 42 km/h top speed. You'd feel it being that little bit faster than the previous tank, which is definitely a nice thing for it. Internal fire chance is 15%, which is in the middle of the fire chances, and generally, yeah, again, if it gets shot in the front or in the rear, where the engine gets damaged, it likes burning, so be careful of that. 28.34 degrees a second on the track traverse is, again, not incredibly fast, but it's not incredibly slow, and it means that you can traverse this vehicle pretty well to be able to get the gun on target. 243 meters of still concealment, as you can see right here, is very, very nice. With 261 meters of on the move concealment, it means you can stay stealth pretty easily in this vehicle to be able to keep the damage flowing, as you've already been seeing me use that bush there here on Vineyards. And yeah, the camo is nice for the ARV-39, and it really helps it to stay stealthed. It's very good camo at 243. Not quite as good as the Bathtub, which is absolute filth, but it is still pretty good. 448 meters of view range means you are just above the 445 meter spotting cap, so you can spot people up to that cap, but it's still not got the best view range in the universe. But because you have such good camo, again, it means you can outspot people pretty easily. A 1.01 accuracy during rotation is neither good nor horrendous for a turretless tank destroyer, but you do have a 2.65 accuracy during movement, and that means that, yeah, the gun does bloom out a fair bit when you move the tank here on the RLV-39 with the 105mm gun, but it's not the worst bloom I've ever seen in my life while playing it. You do have a 2.12 second aim time, which does help it get aimed in that little bit quicker as well, as you're seeing here. You've got 6 degrees of gun depression, which, like I say, is a bit limiting on a ridgeline, and it can feel a little bit annoying at times, especially with having the giant little turret on the top for the RLV-39. So do be careful of that, because that little tumour on top of the vehicle is very easy to pen for most vehicles. You've got 7 degrees to the left and 7 degrees to the right on the yaw limit, which, like I say, is a bit of a pain for the entire rest of the line, as it means you have to turn the tracks quite often to be able to keep your gun on target, especially on tanks that are moving quite quickly. And because the general accuracy during movement and rotation dispersions aren't great, it means your aim circle will bloom out quite a lot, very commonly for this line. And it can be just so annoying when you just about get it fully aimed. You're like, I can pull the trigger now, I can't, because I've got to readjust my tracks, which means the aim circle blooms out, which means I've got to re-aim, that sort of thing. It can be really annoying here on the French tank destroyers. A 0.32 accuracy at 100 meters, though, for this 105mm gun is a lot less derpy than it is on the Bathtub, which can be quite nice for it. A 7-second reload is 2.5, nearly 2.6k DPM for this 105mm gun, which is pretty good DPM for a tier 6 tank destroyer, and again, it just means you rack up the damage pretty quickly. 165 pen on the standard AP, 223 on the premium APCR, and 54 on the HE, same as the previous tank with this 105mm gun. 300 alpha on the standard, 330 on the premium, and 360 on the HE. With the 850 meters a second shell velocity on the standard AP, 1063 meters a second shell velocity on the premium APCR, and 850 meters a second shell velocity on the HE. Like I say, you have to give a lot of lead at distance to be able to hit your targets with the AP and the HE, but generally you're not going to fire the AP that often in either this tank or the Bathtub, because, like I said, the APCR is the start of the show with the 105mm gun. If you want to fire AP and fire standard and not lose money, to be perfectly honest, you really have to run the 90mm gun, which is a very good 90mm gun. I'm not going to detract from it. It is a very good 90mm gun, because you've got good penetration, pretty good DPM, well, pretty much the same as DPM, and your accuracy is really good on it as well. It's just down to personal preference, and I like my TDs hitting that little bit harder, so the 240 gun generally feels a little bit underwhelming, whereas this 105 feels more tank destroyer-y. And in terms of the crew and equipment, I run exactly the same as the Bathtub. So as you've seen in this game here, we've got 2.4k damage with 1015 assistance damage. We end up getting spotted there for that shot on the Sturm Tiger P, and that's because the Indian pans are closed in, and at this point I kind of just go, you know what, I'm just going to chance it for another shot, and I realise, yeah, I'm just going to die here, because my reverse speed at 12 kilometers an hour is a little bit slow, and can be right pain. To be fair, for a tier 6 tank destroyer in a tier 8 game, we had a pretty nice game there with the second class and the 1051 base XP for 2.4k damage and 1015 assistance damage. Tier 6 in a tier 8 game, that's not a bad game at all. And again, that replay, and the reason I liked that replay over some of the others I had, because I had some better games while getting it, but I actually liked that replay better because it still showed you a lot of the strengths of the tank, even though we lost and, you know, we made some mistakes in there. Like, we should never have poked the Indian Panzer in the end, and we probably shouldn't have fired at the Sturm Tiger P, but, you know, it is what it is. Those positions we took, the bush, the firing, the not getting spotted, that is generally the ARL V39. It is very, very nice for that. But now we're on to the AMX AC-46 at Tier 7, and now, this isn't the best tank destroyer in the universe. Generally, it's pretty decent when you're top tier. It's pretty decent, but when you're bottom tier and you get Tier 8s, it just is not great. And The camo can be pretty decent on this thing now. 6.0 is a thing, and camo net always active is a thing for it. That's okay. That's something it really did struggle with back in the day. But the gun occasionally can be a bit derpy, which can be annoying. DPM is alright, but not great. The mobility on it is alright. No, that is pretty good, to be fair. But it's a very big target, and the armor kind of sucks. And as soon as you go in against tier 8s with their standard pen and tier 9s, they butcher this thing very easily, and a lot of the premium rounds from tier 7 butcher it too, which is why it kind of feels decent when you are top tier. It can play the tank destroyer role, but the camo isn't absolutely incredible, and a lot of the time you will end up getting spotted, which can be a bit frustrating for the MXAC-46. Or as soon as you get pressured, you know? But I just didn't particularly enjoy this vehicle that much. So in terms of the AMX-AC46, it's got a 50 km/h top speed, 16 km/h reverse speed, 750 horsepower engine, which is 14.85 horsepower per ton ratio, which means that it is a little bit sluggish again, but you will get up to 50 km/h top speed. 2.3 on soft, 1.38 on medium, and 1.2 on firm in terms of the terrain resistances. Do hold the tank back a little bit, and again, help to make this tank feel a little bit sluggish when getting up to its top speed. You got 20% internal fire chance, which, yeah, believe me, this thing gets set on fire all the time. It's really frustrating. As soon as you get shot in the side, in the rear, it gets set on fire. It lights up like a tinderbox. It's really frustrating for that. 28.34 degrees a second on the hull rotation speed means the tank does turn decently quick on its tracks. It's not incredibly fast, but it's decently quick on its tracks. You've got 289 metres of steel concealment, which is, again, not too bad, but it's not great for a tank destroyer. It's not like the previous two tanks, which were really good. You know, it's where you have to switch up the playstyle a little bit because of the camo being still good at 289. I'm not knocking that whatsoever, but it's not at the level of the previous two. And 300 metres of on-the-move concealment means it's a lot easier for you to get spotted in this tank while on the move, but it's still pretty good. 448 metres of view range is the same as the previous tank. Again, it's neither good nor is it bad. It means you can spot up to that 445 metres of spotting cap, but at the same time, it can be awkward, and especially now you don't have quite as good camo as the previous vehicle, it means you don't spot things quite as easily before they spot you. You've got 0.76 accuracy during rotation, which is actually pretty good for a turretless tank destroyer, with the 2.76 accuracy during movement, which again is not great, which means as soon as you move the tank, the aim circle does bloom out quite a bit here on the MXA-46, which can be annoying, same as every other tank destroyer realistically. With a 2.3 second aim time, it means it does take it a little wee bit to actually get it aimed in on target. 10 degrees of gun depression is lovely for the MXAC-46, and it means it is pretty good on a ridgeline. But because the gun is mounted in the centre of the hull, and it is such a big target with the giant cupolas that are very easy to pen, it means most of the time when you are coming over a ridgeline, most people will see your weak spots before you'll be able to get the gun on target into them, and it can be super frustrating for that as it gives them easy shots. 0.28 accuracy at 100 metres, though, is accurate, and this gun is one of those where it's got 0.28 accuracy, but sometimes this gun does not feel like it, and it likes to hit the floor, which can be so annoying for saying it's actually got pretty good accuracy. A 7.29 second reload is 2.4, nearly 2.5k DPM, which again is neither great nor bad. It's just in that middle ground where you go, it's alright, you know? Maybe if I had a lower alpha gun at 240, I kind of want it to be a bit faster, but yeah, so-so, to be fair. At tier 7, it's not horrendous. It's just that, you know, when you've got that slightly lower alpha at times, you go, ooh, I just wish it was a little bit quicker. But there we go, especially for everything else that's a bit sucky for the tank. You got 232 penetration on the standard AP though, with 263 penetration on the premium APCR and 50mm of pen on the HE for 300 alpha. Now the alpha is nice at 300, and the penetration is fantastic. It means you won't struggle to pen pretty much all the tanks you'll ever face in this tank. It is a tier 8 gun down on a tier 7 tank destroyer, which is pretty common. You got 1,000 metres a second shell velocity on the standard AP, with 1,250 metres a second shell velocity on the premium APCR. Again, absolutely fantastic velocity on the premium APCR, and 1,000 metres a second is bang average, which means you don't have to give a horrendous amount of lead to be able to hit your targets, but do give a little bit more lead, and you will notice the difference between the two rounds when you fire because of that shell velocity being so nice. But yeah, on the whole, like I say, the tank isn't great in this day and age. It just kind of struggles along. It is a bit of a pain to play, and especially when you end up against tier 8s and 9s where they spot you really quite easily and you can't hide from them that easily because you're a big tank, and you don't really hurt them as much either because you've only got 300 alpha. It just can be a bit of a pain. The tank does have the choice to run the 90mm gun, by the way, because it's not that much worse. It has 240 alpha instead of 300, but you get 2.8, nearly 2.9k DPM on that gun, which is absolutely phenomenal, and the gun is generally a little bit more accurate. So you could run the 90mm gun if you do not enjoy this 100mm gun as well, just for that extra DPM, as the pen does suffer on the standard round, but the premium round is still good enough as well. It's a bit of a choice. It's down to you and your how you feel comfortable playing the vehicle, realistically. So here on this game, again, on Vineyards, 2 in a row, who knew? We're up to 4.8k damage with 685 assistance damage, and we're in a bit of a tight game here. We've got 5 kills. The Hammer's now down to 2 HP with that shot. I was kind of hoping maybe I could high roll and kill him, but apparently not. We're just being as careful as possible not to get hit by artillery. We get spotted by the medium tank behind us, get out of his way, and then end up bouncing the tank in front of us, and it's a T1 heavy. So we put the shot in, finish off the T1 heavy there, and you can see even though we're moving and stuff, the bloom isn't horrific on the MXAC-46, and because you've got that aim time at 2.3 as well, it doesn't take too long. But sadly for us, the Hammer coming over the ridgeline went, tank spotted, bang, hit us instantly, but we hit him as well. So we got an eye for an eye medal, and sadly it was another defeat for us, and we finished with the 7 kills, 4.8k damage, 685 assistance damage, ace tanker, the Devastator, the high caliber, the top gun, with that 1377 base XP on a loss. Really nice game for the MXAC-46 there, but, well, we could have done with a little bit of help, and it's one of those, realistically, that, yeah, we just kind of got done in. And that Hammer came over and went, the moment he spotted it, insta-hit us on the move. And that's the armor for you, the MXAC-46. Really, it just really is for it, where the Hammer went, tank, bang, hit us, penned us, no problem whatsoever. Didn't even have to hit the weak spot, because as soon as they go above 220, 230, 240 pen, they go straight through the hull armor ridiculously easily. And it's something that this MXAC-48 suffers from a little bit too, in all honesty, that the armor is similar enough to the tier 9 and 10, but it does struggle quite comparatively when coming against the tier 9 and 10 guns. And even against some of the tier 8 guns, especially when they're firing premium, the hull armor on this tank tends to get wrecked as well. Even though you've got the giant cupola that's a spot to pen for people, they still can go through your hull armor. You can bounce shots more often in this tank than you can on the previous vehicles, but yeah, don't try to rely on it too much, because the MXAC-48 is one of those that I didn't like. And there's a big thing with this, and it's the reason I don't like the Foch either, or the Foch 155 with the 120, and it is I don't like this 120mm gun. I just don't get on with this gun on any tank I've played except for the MXM451. The MXM451 is the only tank I've ever enjoyed this French 120mm gun, because it's basically the same gun that is on so many of the French tanks, and I hate it on every single tank, which means that I never enjoyed either this, the Foch, or the Foch 155 with that 120mm gun, because it's one of those that, again, it likes to go, you know what, I know I'm fully aimed, I know I'm decently accurate, I'm just going to miss anyway, because I hate you. I hate you entirely. And you sit there going, thanks, gun, I love you too. You know, it's one of those. So, I hate this gun on pretty much all the tanks except for the MXM451. But, yeah. The MXAC-48, it's got a 50km/h top speed with a 16km/h reverse speed. 16.81 horsepower per ton ratio means it's fairly mobile. It will get up to that top speed. And the terrain resistances aren't horrendous either compared to the previous tanks, with 2.17 on soft, 1.26 on medium, and 1.17 on firm, which means, again, it gets up to its top speed fairly easily. It does like burning. 20% internal fire chance, set on fire all the time, this vehicle, as soon as you get shot in the side and in the rear. Yeah, it's really frustrating that it gets set on fire all the time, this tank. 30.63 degrees a second on the hull rotation speed means this tank does turn on its tracks pretty quickly, which is good for a turretless tank destroyer. It means you can keep your gun on target. 266 meters of still concealment is actually pretty good, though, for the MXAC-48, and it means that, as you can see here, you do stay unspotted a good amount, unless a tank comes way too close, like that Stir Emil. 279 meters of on-the-move concealment is also pretty good for the MXAC-48, means you can get into position a lot easier without getting spotted. 484 meters of view range is nice for the tank as well. Really helps you to spot at distance and outspot your opponents very, very easily, which is nice to be able to use this 3-shot autoloader and dish the damage out before you get your spotted yourself. You've got a 0.93 accuracy during rotation with a 2.63 accuracy during movement. Now, that's not great at all. Again, it means you do have to sit and wait for your aim time to come in, which is 2.44 seconds, which again is not great, and it means you do have to sit and wait for this aim time to come in so that you can get the shots in and not miss, because if you don't aim the shots a lot of the time, this gun hates you and it will miss, and it hates me. It really does hate me. It's one of those that I hate using, but there you go. I don't think I've said it enough. 6 degrees of gun depression again can be a bit inflexible on a ridgeline and can be a right pain at times, especially for such a tall tank. 10 degrees to the left and 10 degrees to the right is the yaw limit of this vehicle. That's how far it looks to the left and the right. And that can be very, very limiting for this MXCC-48, meaning that, again, you can have the tank in your sights, get the gun fully aimed, and by the time the gun is fully aimed, they're out of your sight line, and you have to wait for it to aim in again, which is, yeah, pure pain. You got a 26.86 second reload, which is 2.2k DPM, but again, it's an autoloader. You don't particularly pay attention to the DPM too much with an autoloader, as it's all about the burst damage, which this tank has a 3-shot auto-loading 120mm gun with a 2.7 second intra-clip reload. So it takes 2.7 seconds, then you get to fire again, 2.7 seconds, and then fire again. 257 penetration on the standard AP, with 325 penetration on the premium APCR, 65 on the HE, which you'll never take, generally, because you won't ever really get too much chance to fire the HE, and it annoys me that I've got 4 loaded there. I don't know why I've done that, but there you go. Means that, yeah, your penetration is fantastic on this vehicle. You don't really struggle to pen anything you're going to face, and especially the premium APCR is lovely. 1,067 meters a second shell velocity on the standard AP, with 1,334 meters a second shell velocity on the premium APCR. You feel it's one of those tanks, and it's one of those guns, actually, to be honest, that when you fire premium, you feel a massive difference in the gun handling. You really do, because that shell velocity makes such a huge difference in how this gun feels, and it feels like you hit more shots because of it. Which, yeah, it's one of those things. But yeah, in terms of the equipment, by the way, you've just seen it flash up on screen. I do run the optics, camo net, and vents, as opposed to what we run on the previous one, because you can't run an advanced loader on this tank, as it is an autoloader. So I run vents just to get the best out of the accuracy, aim time, all that good stuff, and the reload, and the view range as well is one of the main ones. But you could quite easily run the GLD, which is what I run on the Foch and the Foch 155, because that aim time is poor. So you can, every time you are having to turn and the aim circle blooms out, it means your gun will aim in a lot quicker. It's really down to you and how you want to play the tank. But the MXCC-48 is a tank that I really didn't particularly enjoy grinding through, to be perfectly honest with you. And it's just, yeah, it's a bit of a pain at times. But the way that these Fochers go is that you've got the MXCC-48, which is basically a Foch at tier 8, but it's a 3-shot autoloader, slightly worse armour, that sort of thing. Then you get the Foch at tier 9, which has got slightly better armour, camo, view range, etc, etc, but you get 4 shots in the clip on the same 120mm gun, and then you get the Foch 155, where you get the same 120mm gun again, and a 155mm gun option, and that 120mm gun gets a 6-shot autoloader. It just keeps increasing as you go along here. So, the Foch, it's got a 50km/h top speed, with a 16km/h reverse speed, a 1,000 horsepower engine, which is 19.93 horsepower per ton ratio, which, as you've seen so far, means you hit the top speed fairly easily. The tank is fairly mobile indeed. It does like getting set on fire, again, a lot, which is pain. 15% internal fire chances in the middle of fire chances, but yeah, doubly, it likes getting set on fire a lot, this tank. 2.21 on soft, 1.29 on medium, and 1.2 on firm. Again, occasionally, depending on the terrain you're in, it can feel sluggish, which can be a bit frustrating, but it's still not too bad. A 30.52 degree a second hull rotation speed means the tank does turn pretty quickly on its tracks, which can be pretty good for the Foch. 262 meters of steel concealment is ever so slightly better than the previous tank. With 277 meters of on-the-move concealment, that is pretty good camo for the Foch. Helps it stay unspotted in a lot of situations. 486 meters of view range is also pretty decent. Not great, but it's pretty decent, meaning you can spot for yourself pretty decently as well, with the fact that you have pretty good camo. By the way, we got really lucky to be alive in this game, but we're going to make the most of it. We've got 0.91 accuracy during rotation, with a 2.55 accuracy during movement, which means that the aim circle does bloom out a fair bit as soon as you turn the tank. Just like the previous vehicles, it's fairly similar in that regard. With 10 degrees to the left and 10 degrees to the right on the yaw limit, means you do have to turn the tank every now and then when things are travelling quite quickly, which means the aim circle blooms out quite a bit, which can add to a bit of the frustration levels for the fact that you go, yes, I'm fully aimed. Oh, I've got to aim again. Sad times, right? But you have a 2.03 second aim time, which means that it does aim in very, very quickly with the build that I run, and that's the reason I run GLD, to be honest, on this vehicle, is because it was a bit frustrating every time that the aim circle bloomed out massively. I had to wait for a little bit longer to get the aim circle there, so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to run the GLD, and it made a bit of difference to me, or make the gun feel a little bit nicer for me, and make it that little bit easier just to get the shots out quicker, as it is this 120mm gun from the French, and I just don't like it, but there you go. So, with the Foch, you have this 4-shot auto-loading 120mm gun, which has added a shell onto your clip from the previous vehicle. It's now got a 2.4 second intra-clip reload instead of the 2.7 of the previous vehicle, meaning it does dump the clip a little bit faster, and you've got the added shell as well, which means you've got a 1600 clip potential. 27.55 second reload means it does take a little bit to get the gun fully loaded, but for 1600 clips, pretty nice. 2.7k DPM, which, like I say, you don't pay attention to DPM too much in an autoloader, as it is all about that burst, and having that 1600 clip potential is very nice indeed. With the same penetration on this 120mm gun as the previous tank, 257 on the standard AP, 325 on the premium APCR, 65 on the HE, with 1,067 meters a second shell velocity on the AP, and 1,334 meters a second shell velocity on the premium APCR, and it's 1,067 on the HE as well. So like I say, it is slightly above average velocity on the AP, which means you do have to give a decent amount of lead at distance to be able to hit the targets. And the 1,334 meters a second shell velocity is fantastic. And it's one, again, that's the thing with this French 120mm gun. It's one of those guns that really, at times, feels a bit poopy to use until you load premium. And then you got a 1,334 velocity, and it is utterly fantastic. And you really don't feel like you have to give that much lead for the shells to keep hitting. And also the penetration helps at 325, but the velocity is the big thing. It makes the gun feel so much kinder to you when you're firing the shells. But yeah, on the whole, the Foch is one of those tanks that I didn't particularly get on with. Like, I like the Foch 155 because it's got the big gun, and the big gun is lovely, and it's hilarious and memey at times. But this 120mm gun is just, again, it's a gun that I don't like on pretty much all of the French tanks that use it, except for the 51. And yeah, in this auto-loading form where it likes to miss and every shell that you miss feels painful, yeah, it's a bit frustrating. But the thing is with the Foch as well is that you don't really bounce much either, because your armor isn't that great. And that means that when you miss shells and you miss the chance to be able to do those trades, it can be just a bit of pain in reality. So yeah, I do run the camo net, the GLD, and optics on this Foch here, same as I'll run on the Foch 155, and I'm running that GLD, like I say, just to get that aim time down as low as possible, so I'm ready to fire this clip a lot quicker in the tank, so that we can just keep the damage pushing out, because of the fact that we fire and the aim circle blooms out quite a bit. Sometimes you have to wait a little bit longer just to get the shells out, if you have to wait for the aim time, so it's nice to be able to get the aim circle in quicker. So here on this game, on this map, which is Ardennes, we've managed to get 5k damage with 937 assistance so far, and we've managed to turn what started out as a terrible game into a really nice game. We're going to help our Night Stalker out here against this Batchat 25T, who I'm assuming has fired all of his clip, but the way he stopped there to look at me, I thought, well, maybe he's loaded, but no, I think he'd dumped his whole clip into towards the Night Stalker there, and we're just going to run the opposite way from him, so that in case he has loaded or he is going to get an extra shell out, we're just not going to get shut down by him. We're up to 5.8k damage with 937 assistance damage, and we're just going to try and cut this Batchat 25T off. But yeah, this game in the Foch is one of those where it's definitely a don't give up kind of game, because we got nearly fully clipped out, and we were very lucky to be alive, because the Foch 155 with the 120 nearly fully clipped us. But we took a second, calmed ourselves down, and went, oh, okay, you know what, let's go see what we can do. And thankfully, we had a really nice game. Even if we got shut down by a T92 at the end of it, we still had a really nice game there for the Foch, with basically no hit points to our name. And finished the game with the really nice total, with the 5.9k damage, 937 assistance damage, the victory, with top of the team, 1810 base XP in that pretty damn tier 10 game there for a Foch, which is very common for a tier 10, realistically. And yeah, that's the Foch. It's a tank that, again, I didn't particularly enjoy the Foch. I didn't actually enjoy this line, to be honest. I enjoyed the tier 5. I enjoyed the tier 6. The tier 7 was a bit, oh. And then the tier 8 I didn't enjoy. I didn't enjoy the Foch. And then I got to the Foch 155. And using the 120mm gun, again, I did not enjoy this vehicle. It has absolute meme-worthy potential, because the ability to clip people out with this gun is hilarious at times. But Again, it's got the same problem. It's the 120mm gun that the French generally use, and it occasionally, and quite a lot, derps shots that you sit there going, why did you miss that shot? You should not have missed that shot. Really? Thanks, gun. I love you too, once again. Which means that the potential that you have is wasted a lot when you are firing the shells, and it can be just really frustrating. But again, I just don't like that. It's a personal preference. I just do not like this 120mm gun. When you get to the 155, that's where I feel this tank comes into its own, and it feels that little bit special and lovely in general. But we are going to start with this 120mm gun. So the Foch 155 has a 50km/h top speed with a 16km/h reverse speed. A 1000 horsepower engine means you've got a 17.8 horsepower per ton ratio, which means you get up to the 50km/h top speed pretty easily. 32.7 degrees a second hull rotation speed means the tank turns pretty quickly on its tracks, which can be nice. 2.21 on soft, 1.47 on medium, and 1.29 on firm. Meaning, again, the ground resistances aren't great, but they're not horrendous. They can occasionally make this tank feel sluggish, and this tank does feel sluggish and getting to that top speed, but it will get there. And it likes getting set on fire all the time, by the way, 15%. It's a commonality for the line. It likes getting set on fire, which can be irritating. 262 meters of steel concealment with 277 on the move concealment is the same as the previous tank. It is nice camo indeed for the type of tank it is, especially for how big it is. 486 meters of view range, again, similar to the Foch before it. For a tier 10, not great view range, but it's good enough that, again, with the good camo, you can outspot vehicles at distance. You've got a 0.88 accuracy during rotation with this 120mm gun, with a 2.2 accuracy during movement, which is, again, it's not great, but it's not bad. But the aim circle doesn't bloom out quite as badly as the previous two tanks, meaning it doesn't take quite as much to be able to get this gun fully aimed in. You got 6 degrees of gun depression, which once again can feel a bit inflexible on a ridgeline, as you're seeing here. With 10 degrees of yaw limit to the left and right, again, it's a bit limiting in terms of how far you can look to the left and the right. We've got a 1.86 second aim time on this 120mm gun because we are running the GLD, but again, you could quite happily just not run the GLD and run something like vents to get the best reload you can get out of the tank. But I like the ability to be able to aim this gun in really, really fast. So again, I can just keep dumping this 6 shell clip and get the potential to be able to full clip someone out, which this E100, by the way, you poor, poor person, I'm coming for you, sir. But yeah, we've got 0.28 accuracy at 100 meters, which is pretty accurate. Again, this gun is fairly accurate, but it loves to miss, which is the frustration for me. A 30.79 second reload on this 120mm gun with a 6-shot clip, which is 2-second intra-clip reload, which means it dumps the rounds very, very quickly compared to the previous two tanks, which is amazing. And as you can see here, with that 3.5k DPM, technically, although, again, you don't really pay attention to that as much because it's about burst, you can just do that. When you catch out a tank that's isolated, it's filth, and it likes to be filthy. Doing stuff like that to an E100 who gave me his drive wheel, and that moment he gave his drive wheel away, I was like, you're so screwed, man. You're so screwed. I'm so sorry. And he was gone. In terms of the penetration and the shell velocity, it's the same as the previous two tanks, 257, 325, 1,067 meters a second shell velocity on the AP, 1334 on the premium APCR, and once again, it's one of those tanks that if you fire the APCR, the gun handling feels infinitely better, not because of penetration, but because of shell velocity. But that 2-second intro clip is what is filthy about this autoloader, in just how fast it dumps this clip, and as you've seen with the E100, it can be pure filth in just the damage output. I'd say in terms of the mean value of the damage output and how fast it does it, this is probably the better gun. But the 155 just has that mean potential because you still have the similar clip value, but at the similar, not the same, but similar. But it puts it out a lot slower. But I like it because it chonks, and it means that when you get the opportunity to only fire once, you hit people a lot harder than you do on this gun. But it is a little bit derpier, but it's absolutely my preference for this vehicle is the 155 over this 120mm gun. Does that mean the 120mm gun's terrible? No, it's still a pretty damn solid gun for the tank, and as you can see, we finished the game with 6.3k damage, 78 assistance damage, and you've seen the memes that this tank can produce with this gun, like that poor E100. That was the perfect example of what this thing can do. When you have someone isolated, you just go, well, it is your time to die, my friend. And we finished with the first class, the high caliber, the sniper medal, 6.3k damage with 1541 base XP. A pretty good game there for the Foch with the 120mm gun. But now we're on to the Foch 155, the proper Foch 155, with the 155mm gun. Now this 155mm gun has a 1.33 accuracy during rotation, which is atrocious. 2.33 accuracy during movement, which again It's not actually terrible for a tank destroyer, but it's still not great, and it means the aim circle blooms out a lot on this vehicle when you move and turn the tank. And you've got 2.43 second aim time, which is exactly why you want to run the GLD with this gun especially, because that aim time is really not great, and that's the best aim time you can get out of it with that. Which means it takes a wee while to get it aimed in, especially with the bloom being quite large on this vehicle. You've got 6 degrees of gun depression, like I say, with the 10 degrees either to the left and right for the yaw limit, which is limiting for it. But 6 degrees of gun depression can be a pain on a ridgeline, means you have to overexpose yourself quite a lot to be able to get the shots out. It is pretty accurate, though, when you get it fully aimed, as it has a 2.9 accuracy at 100 meters, which is pretty nice. You have a 3-shot clip with this 155mm gun, which has a 5-second intra-clip reload, so it does take a while to get the shells out. It takes 10 seconds from firing the first shell. And you have a 40.52 second reload for the entire clip, which means it takes a wee while for the clip to get loaded, and it takes a wee while to dump the clip. And technically, you got 2.7k DPM, but again, autoloader. It's more about the burst than the raw DPM. The thing with this gun is it hits hard, as you have 770 alpha, or 1100 on the HE, but because of the shell capacity, I tend to just not take the HE. And how long it takes to reload, I don't feel it's worth it. But it has got good penetration at 90mm on that HE. You've got 293 penetration on the standard AP, which is fantastic. Absolutely amazing penetration, goes through pretty much all the tanks you're ever going to face. But if you feel like you're struggling to pen things, you can just load 395 pen heat rounds, which are pure filth, and butcher everything, and go through pretty much everything. That penetration on the heat is filth, absolute filth. And the 770 alpha is nice. Again, when you get the opportunity where you can only fire once, it means you hit people harder with the 770 as opposed to just 400 with the 120, which is my preference for a tank destroyer realistically. You got 826 meters a second shell velocity on all 3 rounds on the 155, which is derpy, and that shell velocity is poor, which means you have to give a lot more lead with this gun than you have to do the previous gun, and it makes the gun handling feel that bit worse, and especially when you're firing at distance, it can make the gun feel not great at all, which is where people will prefer the 120mm gun, because it'll probably feel more consistent to them in that regard. But if you're used to derpier guns, if you're used to worse shell velocity, there we go, we'll get there in the end, English is hard. If you're used to worse shell velocity guns, you'll deal with the Foch 155 pretty well. And that's me in general. I definitely prefer this gun to the 120 just because it hits harder and it's so much more satisfying to use. And when you get to just YOLO into someone and smash them with this gun for 770, or hit them with the 2310 clip in general, that's the clip potential for it. It's just, yeah, again, it's one of those, it's super satisfying. Because you go, hello, Mr. 780. Well, slap. I'm just going to use my mobility now with the 50 kilometers now to get around this corner and slap you once again. And that's what this tank does. And yeah, I much prefer this 155, and it's the one that I main for the 155. But again, it's all down to personal preference. A lot more people will probably enjoy the 120 because of the consistency, but this heavy hitting gun is just the one. It's just absolutely the one. So here on this second game on Heilbronn, we've managed to get 4.3k damage so far with 315 assistance, and we're just waiting on our reload now to go after this AMX M454. Now, you saw me boost my reload with food, which is something that is very handy to be able to do for this gun, especially because of how long it takes to reload. But you have to wait for it to hit about 30 seconds to be able to do it. I hit it way too slow, or way too quickly, I should say, or way too early. And as you can see, my food is going to run out, which means my reload is actually going to go slightly up. Although, not much by the looks of that, but there you go. So just remember to boost it as soon as you hit the 30 mark, because then your reload will be in by the time the food boost runs out, but I digress. We managed to get the shot in, finally, to be able to get after the MX M454, up to 4.6k damage, and we're just going to push in on this VZ55. We know the TD at the end pulled back, but the 4005 that was at the end of the road said, "Hi, I have a 183mm gun, and it hurts." That man had no problem whatsoever snapping the shot straight through our... Oh, look at where he actually hit us. Straight through that gun section there, which... Penders took over 1,000 hit points off us. Thankfully, the VZ55 didn't actually manage to pen us, though, because he panicked and bounced both shells off our upper plate, which the upper plate on the Foch can do. It's decent upper plate. It's not incredible, but it's decent enough that you can bounce standard rounds from tier 9s and 10s pretty easily, especially in that sort of close quarters. And because that VZ55 panicked, it meant that we got away with it, and he didn't manage to finish us off. We're up to 5.9k damage, 735 assistance. There's just this 4005 left, and I want my vengeance. I want my payback. Give me back my 1,000 hit points, sir. He drives out in front of us. We hit him on the move. Finish off that 4005, getting the vengeance for our hit points. And finish the game with the victory. The 3 kills, 5.9k, nearly 6k damage, 735 assistance. The second class with 1387 base XP. Pretty decent game there for the Foch 155, showing off that Foch 155 155mm gun, which is absolutely my preference for this tank. Again, I don't think either or is better for it. I think it is truly down to you and how you're going to be able to get the most out of the tank with either of the two guns. But that's the French tech tree from tier 5 to tier 10 for the tank destroyers. As always, everybody, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.
A great success!